Flirties? On the show today is Kelsea Warren. Kelsea helps individuals and businesses elevate well-being and prevent burnout by identifying and aligning their workplace values. As a former therapist and social worker, as well as a PhD student in industrial organizational psychology, Kelsea takes a holistic approach to well-being at work. And today, she's bringing her skills to help us date by identifying our values and why values-based dating might just be your next best dating strategy. Hello, Kelsea. Welcome to Flirtations.
Hello again. Thanks so much for having me back.
Yes, back on the show, the first time you were on somehow over 100 episodes ago, the flirting and dating at work episode.
Yeah.
My, how time flies.
For real.
A lot has, let's get some updates. Flirties, if you haven't listened to that episode, after this, go back. We answer your flirting and dating at work questions. What if I have a crush on my coworker? How does all of that work at work? But since then, you've moved.
Yes. Yeah.
What's going on?
We lived in North Carolina, not too far from you.
I know. Just as I was like getting settled here, you were like, bye, I gotta go.
See ya. And now we live in Wyoming, which has been such an unexpected but pleasant change. So we're Oregon natives, so we can get a little bit of that vibe if we just hop down to Colorado. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds here, I think.
Yeah. I've been there one time. For the Floridians that don't know, let's see. Wyoming is a state. It is the least populated state, and it's in the Intermountain West. So if you can picture maybe where Yellowstone is, the Rockies, it's sort of in between all of that. Yes. Yellowstone in Wyoming, but far up there in the northwest corner.
Yeah. We are in Cheyenne, so we're only about 20 minutes from the Colorado border.
Yeah.
And a little bit more Western, I would say.
So have you been to a rodeo?
So we actually just finished. Cheyenne actually has the world's largest outdoor rodeo that lasts like 10 days.
Oh my God.
It's called Cheyenne Frontier Days. And it's basically this huge carnival. There's rodeo and then larger music acts at night called Frontier Nights. There's a parade like 6 times throughout the whole thing that lasts 2 hours. Tons of things. There's a pancake breakfast. So we have people, both years we've had people come and visit us for this really fun thing. The city transformed. Yes.
I was going to say, you had me at pancake breakfast. I bet the population probably doubles for that.
It goes from 60 to about 250,000.
Oh my God.
It gets
more
wild.
than double. All of a sudden, you're a metropolis up there in the Great Plains.
Yeah, pretty wild stuff. So yes, we did go to a rodeo recently.
Fun. Not only do I love pancakes, but I also love a cowboy. So might have to check it out one of these days. All right, let us get into the conversation today about values-based dating. It's weird. As I was doing some of my flirt search for this, I feel like I've seen a lot of content about values-based dating. I feel like I've seen it. I feel like I've created some of that. And then as I was looking, not a lot came up. I was very, very surprised. There's a lot of content out there about aligning core needs, wants, desires. Sometimes values is a part of that, but it didn't seem that there was a whole lot about it. So I'm really excited to help the Flirties with this perhaps brand new dating strategy today. And as we open the show, I thought it'd be fun to read a quick excerpt from your website. If I may.
Go for it.
Okay. You say, I started my career in mental health as a serial job hopper. From one move to the next, I always felt I was missing something. Either I enjoyed the work, but the mission didn't align, or I didn't love the work and I loved the people. I was constantly searching for a perfect fit, and it wasn't until I realized this was because I was unclear on my workplace values. I was always pursuing a title or role without considering the work environment or the impact on my personal life. I think so many parallels to dating right there.
Yes.
Replace workplace with date or partner, right? Relationship. And I think the Flirties are like, oop, yeah, been there, or maybe that's me right now.
I think I've made a post before about how it is so similar to dating.
So similar, which is why this is a perfect collaboration. So tying it to your experience with workplace values from that share, what was Like, what was that like? That feeling of like, right, kind of maybe trying to force yourself into situations or jobs that weren't a fit, being unclear on what your workplace values were. Yeah, giving a little more to that experience.
Well, I think kind of as you mentioned, there are so many times when you're searching for a title. And I know
Mm.
that we talked about this last time too, and how that can just be unfulfilling. When I think
Yeah,
about how it relates to dating, even you may think you have a certain type of person that
yeah.
you are attracted to, and maybe you are, or you're listing off the criteria or credentials, things they
Hmm.
must have, this
Hmm.
kind of salary or this type of relationship or these kind of interests.
Hmm.
But then when you take it a layer deeper and you think about what you actually need in order to feel fulfilled at
Hmm.
work specifically, you're looking at not just the role and the title and the company, but the way that you work and how you work best.
Yeah.
And so when we think about workplace values, that's where that comes in. And
Okay.
so if you really value structure and stability and you want to go work in a startup environment where it's chaos,
Uh-huh.
that doesn't feel good. And maybe you have the role that you want and you're working at a company and the salary is meeting those expectations, but deep down
Mm.
there's just kind of like friction back there on the back of your brain and you
Yeah.
can't really pinpoint it necessarily. And I
Yeah.
think when you're dating or you're even in a relationship and something just feels a little off, not quite right,
Mm.
I would bet it's probably some sort of value misalignment between you and that person. And you're right. I don't think a lot of people, they may mention values or mention alignment.
Hmm.
Not a lot of people go in much depth about
Yeah.
how you actually do that or what it actually means.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. Yeah.
Perfect.
Because a lot of daters, and I've done this myself, we can make dating about the checklist sometimes, or we date from this place of seeking chemistry, or
Mhm.
we feel maybe some pressure, or we're holding on to expectations. And all of that is very real. But putting a lot of emphasis on that can sometimes cause us to overlook or not even be able to identify or feel what our values are. And the example you just gave is so key. Like, if you value structure in a job and then you're going into a startup, well, I, phew, that's probably going to be very confusing or overwhelming. Or how do I fit in here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how can daters start to identify what some of those values are, or maybe where you start with your clients?
When I start with my clients, we actually do a 2-hour, I call it a deep dive
Yes.
session, and we look at the trajectory of their work history.
Okay.
And this is really the only time we go into the past because that's definitely more therapy
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
related, less coaching. But I just like to hear the tell me about yourself question
Yeah.
with like full, open, and honest transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Many times you're doing this in an interview, but you're not able to explain the full story. And you're also not giving away all the details, of
Right.
course, because
Right.
that's not professional.
Right.
And so when they're doing this, I keep a list of what I hear their workplace values to be,
Uh-huh.
and we review them at the end of that. So when you
Okay.
think about the parallels there, maybe going back a bit and drawing a little timeline for yourself about all of the different partners you've
Mm-hmm.
had or dating experiences,
Mm-hmm.
just like kind of listing what went well and what didn't work. I think that can help you tease out some of those list characteristics or like those more logistical things that
Absolutely.
you're looking for. But then you can also start to identify themes. And when you're looking at what was working really well, you want to think like, well, this person really like gave me energy in this area,
Mm-hmm.
or they definitely like sucked energy out of me
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in this way. So that can help you start to look at those things. Of course,
Okay.
when it comes to personal values or core values, a lot of people call them, those are shaped by a lot of different things.
Mm.
So, your family, your upbringing, your
Yeah.
socioeconomic status, just different things influence that, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. So, of course, the holistic picture is going to be
Yeah.
important there. But I think it's also important to note as you grow and change and you have different life experiences, dating experience, work experiences,
Yeah.
the world has changed. For good or for bad, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Your values can also shift and
Shift and
prioritize, like
change.
you prioritize them differently. Of
Yes.
course, no one's going to say, I no longer value integrity, for example. But
Right.
depending on where you're at in your life,
Mm-hmm.
other things may also be just as much, if not more, of a priority on this kind of spectrum that
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at. So
Okay.
if you were previously dating someone that you thought was super boring,
Mm-hmm.
you may be prioritizing a bit more joy and play in the next relationship. And I
Okay.
think that that's okay.
Okay. And what are some examples of values?
They can really be anything you want them to
Okay.
be. I think there's of course set lists. The Values in Action Character Strengths Survey, so VIA.net.
Mm-hmm.
We can maybe link there. That's a
Sure.
free assessment. It's more, I think, based on like leadership and work type things, but it can
Mm-hmm.
give you some examples that way. But when we're thinking about values, we're thinking about things like joy and play, or like how you show up to conversations and
Okay.
what makes you feel like yourself. So authenticity
Okay.
is one that's frequently used. We have the stability, the structure. Those are kind of more workplace related. When you think
Mm-hmm.
about personal ones, then you want to look at things like, how are you operating in a home or interactions with other, are you really generous?
Mm-hmm.
So generosity is one of mine. Humor, that kind of thing. You're looking at
Okay.
those. Honesty, transparency, those kind of values also
Mm-hmm.
show up. So there's not necessarily like a complete list. And I think you can call them whatever
Yeah.
you feels good for you to articulate that works
Okay.
well for you. But when you think about, I also like to make a differentiation between, I call them like logistical priorities
Mm-hmm.
and values, because
Okay.
someone that makes a certain amount of money, that's like a logistical factor
Okay.
in this, or they live alone. Like maybe that's a criteria
Mm-hmm.
that you have for
Okay.
dating. That's more of like a logistical thing. So,
Okay.
but the core values are going to be things that are deeper, more like personality based in the way they show up in relationships and treat other people.
Okay. I think I'm hearing, all right, we're going to stay here a minute. I think I'm hearing a few different things where the values can go both ways. So they're things that traits or characteristics within yourself, right? That you really want to feel or you really want to see amplified, like someone bringing out the best in you. We hear a lot in dating and relationships, but that also goes for the people that you're dating and connecting with. You want to see those values in them as well. And maybe those values kind of quote unquote align, right? You want the same values in both people, but maybe you want something a little bit different too. So we'll talk about that. And then I think I'm also hearing that values are also feelings, right? They're also about the way that you want to feel, how you actually want to experience dating and relationships and connection beyond just a trait or like beyond just kind of a characteristic or word. Where I'm going with this, just reflecting back what I feel like I'm hearing. So going a little bit deeper, then how can we start to recognize some of those values maybe in others?
I think that you touched on a good point and saying like how that makes you feel
Yeah.
and recognizing that. I think you can also have conversations about, I think we mentioned this on the previous
Mm-hmm.
episode too, like good questions for a first date if you're thinking about that. So if you have a perspective about how a certain word or someone that like may show up in that.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, integrity, what does that mean to you?
Okay.
So you can start thinking about that. What does this mean to me? And what does it actually mean for the people that I interact with? How would someone show up with integrity? And kind of labeling that can help and see how you might identify that in others. Also asking them like, what does this mean to you? What are your thoughts on it? How important it is? Like getting very specific with answers can be helpful in that way. But it can also, like you mentioned, some of the best relationships of people I know, at least, and I know in my own marriage of, I think, almost 12 years at this point. We are very different, and we do have different priorities, I think, when it comes to values, or view them differently. Efficiency is a really good example of this. So my husband is extremely structured. He is very like thoughtful in planning. And to him, that is efficient because he's doing this ahead of time to prevent any issues later on from coming up. And that's how he views efficiency. My view of efficiency is sometimes we don't have to plan everything out and it's never going to happen. My view of efficiency is more like not necessarily cutting corners, but if we can do something quicker, get to the point faster, let's do that.
Okay.
And so those, I would say, very different views of the same value, but also complementary in a relationship, because you need a little bit of both. If we were both like very rigid planners, we'd probably never actually do anything. We would just be stuck in the planning phase.
This is really, really helpful, speaking to that, how we can have similar values. I mean, it sounds like you and your husband both value efficiency, but it shows up a little bit differently in how we can find that balance, how our values can really complement one another as well. You know, maybe it's one of his strengths is not quote unquote your weakness, but then you have a strength within efficiency that balances out. Yeah, because sometimes like you need to have that balance. Lord knows that's something I'm looking for too. And one of the questions I have here is just how we can go beyond the surface a little bit with someone's values, or what we're observing through someone's actions, what we feel like we're hearing through what they're telling us, and then within ourselves as well. Like a classic example, let's say someone has a lot of money, right? Doesn't mean they're generous. And generosity may be one of your core values. So how we can just start to go beyond maybe the label or the superficial, kind of what we see on the surface, and get to the core of, what do I really value here? And how does this other person maybe or maybe not align with that?
I think you mentioned it already, and I think it's just in actions or how they are demonstrating those things. So it's one thing to say things, of course, especially in dating, and it's another to show that person exactly what you mean. You know, if they value, let's say they really just value as a core value family time, and they're saying this to you over and over again, but you never actually see them talking to their family or taking time away to go visit their family, that could be kind of an indicator of like
something to notice. Yes.
what is going on here? And of course, I think that opens up where you can get a lot deeper in just general conversation as well, because there may be something that they're struggling with their family, and maybe they do really value it, but there's, you know, a hard relationship going on there, or it's something that they don't currently have right now that they really want in the future. And so it almost opens the door up, not just to values, but to have those deeper, meaningful life conversations too. But same thing again with like the example you used, generosity. You know, someone's saying that they are doing that, but when you're on dates and they're not tipping, or you know, they're not holding the door open for other people, and that's what you view as just kind of being kind, generous, that kind of thing. Yeah, that could be a good example as well.
And also something that's coming to mind is someone that's generous with their time, right? I'm not expecting someone to like, please don't be obsessed with me after a first date. I'm not looking for that. I don't want to be obsessed with you either. That's getting into some unhealthy attachment. So, but someone who's not going to be stingy with kind of like, oh, well, you took 2 hours to text me back. Now I'm going to take 4. Right. Or I'm going to somehow punish you. I'm not going to, you know, reach out or cancel a date because maybe something didn't happen. Like life happens, but as long as we're communicating honestly, I think honesty is probably one of my core values. I think would be true for all daters. It should be, at least. Yeah. Hopefully. I want to go back to something you said a moment ago that you do with your clients, where they can look in the past. We're not going to stay there, but it can be a good teacher, you know, a place of reflection, and what has worked well for us in previous jobs we've had, kind of how we felt, what we've liked, what we didn't like. And that's something we can do in our relationships, of course, doing this values-based dating work. Can we also look at other relationships? Can we look at our friendships, maybe the relationships we've had with our families? What do you think about that?
I think that people are people, so I don't see any reason why you can't. And you probably should, because I think it would help you make sense of maybe where some of your values are informed from, especially from family members, like what you've carried with you as a priority, and also maybe confronting a little bit of what you want to leave behind as far as priorities and values, whether it's from family members or friendships. I think we've all had friendships where you've kind of grown out of those things, or, you know, for me, it's like once someone annoys me, it's done. We can't go back. So
what's your sign, Kelsey? I pretend like I know a lot. I just know I'm a gay Libra at the end of the day. That's about the extent of my astrological education. For those episodes, check out Fernie, right? Our in-house astrologer here on Flirtations. He'll give you what you need to know. All right, because I was really curious here because I feel like some of the daters that maybe don't have a lot of dating experience might think to themselves, oh, well, I've never had a serious relationship or I've never had a partner. So where do I go to look at what my values might be? Look at your people are people. I love that. You can look at all of your relationships and ultimately the ways you like to connect, how you feel. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously there's going to be some specific to intimacy and that different
Sure.
kind of
Sure.
connection that may be something you experiment with and figure out what it is that you do like and what those things actually mean, not only to
Yes.
you and what your expectations of them are, but for other people and how they interpret them as well. So there will be
Yes.
obviously a little bit of disconnect there in that
Sure.
sense. But for sure, if you haven't had a ton of relationships, I think going back to just anyone else that's close to you and just figuring out what are the good parts of those relationships and maybe the not so great parts when you're looking for alignment.
Yeah. And exploring the different layers of connection too, right? You're not just going to be across from the table, on a first date, talking or having a conversation. It might, it might get more intimate than that as well. And maybe your values there are a little bit different.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or maybe they're the same. Who knows? Who knows? All right. Let us do this question and some of the questions people can ask on those initial dates early in the dating process, because you're probably not going to come out and say, so person, what are your values? So some things that you could say or some conversations you could have that tie into values but aren't necessarily specific, like, what are your values?
That is a good question. I think, you could maybe ask that, but again, I think a lot of people also just aren't fully sure what that means, or they will go to those more logistical factors like I want to have a family or I don't want to have a family. But even let's use that as an example because that one just comes up quite a bit. And for, whether or not you do or you don't, how you might answer that question. So like, what's beneath that really? What does connection mean to you? And how do you connect with people in your life? That could be one. So like that gets into like the relatedness, the belonging, the connection that way. What gives you life in those areas.
Yeah.
And not like the hugest fan of love languages, but it's almost kind of that angle, right? Like figuring out how they're showing up, what works best for them.
Yeah.
So connection is a really big one when it comes to, if you want to just go beyond like, do you want kids or not? That kind of thing in a dating relationship. When you think, and we're going back to workplace values a bit, when you're asking about career or, like what excites you about work, you can ask them more about just what they do and having them tell you what they do and ask them deeper questions. Like, again, like what kind of work energizes you?
Yeah.
How does the structure of work like change your approach day to day or your mood day to day? Do you prefer a fast paced environment? Are you more of a go-getter? So like looking at things like dedication, achievement, and those kind of things, because and it's okay if they do, it's okay if they don't, it's okay if you do or you don't, but you want to know what that person is prioritizing from that lens of values.
Yes. Okay.
Same thing with, if you think about quality time, what does that look like?
Good one.
And it could be of various, if you want to incorporate, if someone says like humor, I want to go watch a funny movie, and you're someone that like thinks that that's boring, or you would rather prioritize something with adventure versus humor. Those are things to consider too.
I'm adding quality time to my list of core values for sure. Yeah, I really need that. Almost that quality time where it's even parallel play, like where you don't necessarily have to be doing something. You're just with one another, no expectations, no pressure. I find that really important, and that goes for friendships as well. This is so good because part of my objective with this conversation is helping flirties get beyond that checklist that we talked about in the beginning, where we're starting to date someone, we're getting to know them, or this could even be a few months into the process. And you may start to bond and connect on the things like, okay, well, they're tall, they're funny, they've got what, nice clothes, they smell good. Okay, not really going to become the foundation for a relationship. We're talking about some surface level physical attraction things, which you can value attraction, but we got to go a little bit deeper. And so like, and then we may bond over, we both like funny movies or we both like adventure. Okay, but what about it? Why? How do we like to experience that?
Mm-hmm.
How can these how can that bring us closer together?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You like to be creative, curious,
Yes.
like those kind of things. And someone isn't just going to outwardly say on a date, I'm a very curious person. Most people wouldn't.
Yeah.
But if you really value that in yourself and you know that you are a more curious person, you like asking questions, like you like figuring out the why behind things.
Yes.
You either want someone also like that or someone that is okay with your curiosity.
Absolutely. And you're naming all of my core values today. I
I just know you.
You really do. This is like what our third time collaborating. I
Mhm.
feel like I've spoken in your group one time about
Yes.
confidence. That was really
Yes.
amazing. Of course, your previous episode on flirtations. All right, let's go here with the conversation because when we're talking about values, and this goes both ways, right? For you and them, this isn't necessarily something that's going to just come all out on a first date or even a second date. A part of this is about being with the dating process and, dare I say, giving someone a chance and giving yourself a chance to explore values, to
Mhm.
go a little bit deeper. So for the dater that gets impatient, that likes to rush, that wants all the answers right away, what can we offer them today?
I was thinking about this also as you were talking, and I don't know what you may teach people, and
Hmm.
this may be very coachy of me, but
Okay.
I do think as you're going through the process, give yourself time to reflect. I
Yeah.
know, especially for me, when I can think back to my dating experiences, it was like all or nothing. I'm talking to
Yes.
you and I'm talking to you all the time, and I want to be with you all the time.
Yes.
But almost offering a little bit of space, not necessarily, and it could just be a night off or whatever it is,
Hmm.
but having some time to reflect and really think about, I walked away from this state, how was I feeling?
Hmm.
Like what made me feel energized? What kind
Hmm.
of conversations, what kind of actions, like from myself, was I experiencing? What things did they do that I really picked up on that I thought were unique or interesting
Yeah.
or attractive, or what was kind of a turnoff? And I didn't really necessarily didn't sit so well with me, or I have more questions about.
Hmm.
Kind of doing some reflective work on that can help
Hmm.
you start to tease out some of those values, or maybe where there is alignment, as we call it, or even the misalignment. So the misalignment is always going to feel like a little bit of friction, leaving you kind of like, what just happened there?
Yeah.
Or, did they really say what they meant in that conversation? And so
Yeah.
especially if you value like transparency, for example, and you walk
Mm.
away from someone or a situation and you're wondering, I have some more questions about what they said, or I'm
Hmm.
not sure that they were telling the full truth. And is this
Hmm.
something that maybe they just didn't want to disclose right away, which is totally fine? Or
Yeah.
was there something else behind it? Like they're maybe not being authentic, that kind of thing.
Mm.
So what I would recommend is the same thing I would recommend in a workplace setting as well, is just allowing for some time and reflection.
Yeah.
And that can really help you label for yourself what some of those values are, especially if you're not quite sure. You're not just going to know necessarily. It's
Exactly.
more of a journey, I think, in
Hmm.
identifying what really is important to you.
Hmm.
And then I think over time as well, giving that person, I'm a big fan of just giving some grace and knowing that they may also be figuring it out,
Hmm.
and their values are also going to change over time. Especially if like, I've been in a relationship for a really long time,
Hmm.
and we have went periods of time where we're like seems like we're moving almost like apart, and then
Yeah.
we come back together
Yeah.
and just redefining, as adults, as homeowners, as parents, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
what that looks like and how we want to adjust to the changes
Mm.
in priorities or things we want to make sure that we hold on to that are extremely important just for our
Yeah.
family as a unit.
Mm. This is so good and so helpful. And we're going to give the flirties here in a moment some maybe prompts or some ideas to do some of that reflecting, because this is something I've resisted in my own dating life, to be honest. But it's really, really helpful because it's just going to help you get to the core, to the essence of what your experience was, rather than, 48 hours later, now you're having conversations with friends, you're like texting your mom, or you're scrolling social media trying to figure out, oh my God, they said this, they did this, what does this mean? And now you're getting all of these second opinions. Your judgment maybe gets a little bit clouded, kind of skewed with other people's opinions. But what was your experience? How do you want to feel? How do you want to show up? What are you looking for in others? It just helps you be, I think, much more objective and aligned, which is important when we're identifying values and then giving yourself, like, I feel like sometimes daters here, like, we're not saying if someone is dismissive or critical, or, they're an hour late to the date and with no apology, no sort of, I'm so sorry, or a reason or justification or something. We're not saying put up with bad dating behavior. But the reality is, when you're just starting to date someone, you might be a little nervous and at the same time wanting to put your best foot forward. So are you going to be fully transparent, fully vulnerable, laying it all out there right away? Probably not. And the same for them. And that's just reality. Yeah. Giving ourselves a little bit of time, which is okay. Even if it's 3-4 dates and it turns out not quite the connection for you, not quite the type of person you're looking for, that's all right. It's not a waste of time.
I think that brings up another good point, and why I love values work so much is that we can really only control ourselves.
Yeah.
And when you are firm on those things that are important to you, so let's say respect is something that's really important to you, just generally, you maybe are late to a date, or they're late to a date, or whatever happens. It allows you to look at it from the lens of that. Well, yes, maybe that happened because they were, late in traffic. It doesn't necessarily mean there's ulterior motives or that it was intentional, but you can kind of gauge that against then what respect means to you. If they show up and then acknowledge, I'm so sorry, I'm late, this happened, that kind of thing. They're respectful about the process, even though the act of being late maybe wasn't respectful in your eyes.
Yeah.
That can be a good indicator. But then you also, so with any kind of values-based work, and same thing for at work as well, you can control how you show up. And at the end of the day, the date could go awry and the conversation can take a left turn, but you can still show up respectfully. You can still show up transparently with generosity. And I think that helps ground and helps you stay true to yourself. And it also protects your well-being in the process, because you don't have to then go and second guess, did I show up the right way? Did I say the wrong thing? Especially if you're awkward and nervous in public like I am.
Me too.
I just really ground on this. Like, at least I showed up, generous and authentic. And I can say that about myself.
Oh my gosh. I really got like the heebie-jeebies, sort of like those chills with that one, because this is an experience I've had. And I know a lot of the flirties have too, that second guessing, right? That kind of like hypercriticism, that overthinking. And this just helps you start to work through all of that and just get to the truth of how you're showing up. You can only control yourself. The experience ultimately, other people are going to be a part of that, but you don't have to necessarily give in to the toxicity or, whatever's happening on the other end of the table, right? Under end of the phone, the screen, whatever. Really being true to yourself and knowing your values is going to be super helpful. So maybe a prompt here, something you do with your clients, how they can start to, we've been talking a lot about values, of course, but uncovering, getting to know what those values are.
A prompt to get to know them, or a prompt for how we're showing up, or both?
Let's do both.
I love, and of course, when I'm working with clients, not necessarily in relationships, but sometimes if we consider, like, I have a tough meeting coming up with a client or a manager or something like that, I will always just ask them to do a quick check-in and ask, like, what do you need? What do you need to get through this conversation in order to feel successful at the end, or feel grounded at the end, or whatever it is that you're looking for the outcome, essentially, but to feel connected at the end. How do you want to show up? So sometimes that's patience. Sometimes that's, I really want to show up to this collaboratively, or I want to show up authentically. I want to show up professional, whatever it may look like.
Yeah.
And that way you can kind of ground yourself in that as almost like an intention before you go into the process. Because values are really about needs as well. So you talked about like needs a lot at the beginning, and that's really just what it comes down to. Like, what do you need from this experience, and how do you need to show up
Mm-hmm.
in order to make the most out of it or just
Mm-hmm.
stand in full confidence in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a prompt that I give a lot of people. It's in my planner. It's like, it's everywhere because I think
Yeah.
it helps you be really intentional with your day. Again, especially at work, things are going to not go how you plan them to
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
regardless of where you work. But at the end of the day, if you can look back and say, you know what, I still showed up, I still collaborated,
Mm-hmm.
and I did, like, that's going to help your confidence and your well-being immensely.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about alignment, it seems such a vague
It's
concept.
kind of this kind of like, yes, vague. It's a little bit spiritual, a
Yeah.
little bit like what is this? I kind of like picture like two sort of spirits or floating bodies sort of like circling each
Yeah.
other. And then like they're like, oh, now we're sort of parallel. Oh, but now we're like maybe coming together, but still
Yeah.
having our own lives. Yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It is like, it's a hard thing to describe, but you
Yeah.
know, when you have it, you know, when you
Yes.
can go to bed at the end of the day and be like, you know, I felt really good today about how I showed up or who I was with or what I was doing.
Yeah.
That's how you know. So I think a lot of times we talk about misalignment too, especially when it relates to burnout, because
Mm-hmm.
it's easier to identify when something feels off.
Yeah.
Or you walk away from an interaction. And I'm sure everyone has had this. I have had it myself. We're all
Mm-hmm.
human, where you're like, huh, like I didn't show up that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like that was probably something I shouldn't have said, or like an emotion that I reacted on
Yeah.
that maybe I wouldn't have typically, you know, I engaged in a conversation that I normally wouldn't have, or I wasn't myself. Like I was masking, you know, putting on, you know that, of course, for us neurodivergent people,
That's a
as well.
episode. What was it? Episode 98. Neurodivergence in dating for the maskers out there. Check out that episode after this.
Good memory.
Somehow, I'm telling you what, I more or less know generally the number.
That's awesome. Good reflection for you
Yeah.
all. But I think I mean, it can go both ways when you're looking at
Absolutely.
it. And of course, my preference is to look at the positive angle of it. I mean, of course, you need to look at the misalignments, but
Mhm.
getting stuck in there kind of feels hard to move forward at times.
Yes.
So that's one prompt. I think when we're just looking at values in general, again, some of
Mhm.
these questions we've been asking: what gives me energy? What drains my energy?
Mhm.
When I can imagining I'm going to bed at night feeling fulfilled. How did I show up that day?
Mhm.
What went well? I love the magic wand question. You know, you wake up in the morning and a
Yeah.
miracle has happened overnight.
Yeah.
Someone's waved a magic wand.
Yeah.
What's different or what's changed? You know, asking those kind of questions can help
Wow.
pinpoint, and also seeing in others, you identifying these people have a really great dating relationship.
Mhm.
What are they doing well? How are they showing up in their relationship? Because
Mhm.
maybe that's something I haven't experienced yet, or that is valuable to me, but I haven't had a chance to see it come to
Yeah.
fruition. So looking at other people that influence you or that you look up to, whether it's at work or even in personal relationships, in their marriages and romantic relationships, however it may be,
Yes.
you can also take a note of that as well if you're struggling.
Yeah. So good. And the flirties, you didn't know this, but that's your homework. Yes. After you finish listening to this, you've got a few more episodes of Flirtations to listen to now, 20 and 98. And then you're going to get your values down on paper. That is part of this as well. We're not just going to think them or talk about them. You're going to list them, and I'll share some of mine. I feel like that's only fair. I'm
Yes,
looking
we
for
know some of them. So what are some more of yours?
one. I mean, curiosity. I definitely want someone that is going to be able to just hold a basic conversation, ask me some questions. It seems like they're interested in getting to know me, not because I necessarily want to talk about myself, but it's important that they also have some intentionality about what they're looking for and why they're dating. If someone can't ask you questions on a first date, second date, is that nerves? Possibly, but there's got to be some interest in getting to know you so they can know if you're a potential match and alignment for them around their values. It's so important. And I'm also looking for patience. I'm looking for someone that's not going to rush me, and I am not going to lead someone on in that process. But I've shared I'm a demisexual, so I move slowly when it comes to physical intimacy. I need that emotional connection first. And so someone that's going to be able to, they don't have to be the same, but they can understand, be patient, and not rush me. Like, how many times have I, not kissed someone by a second or third date and they just ghost, or they, end it because they think I'm not attracted to them? Like, have we not been talking? Have we not been going on dates? This is just how I am. And so I'm looking for that patience. I'm looking for some honesty, of course, humor, someone that can make me laugh. I am not sacrificing humor in a relationship
Me
ever
either.
again. You don't have to be a stand-up comedian by any means, have, a bunch of dad jokes and one-liners. If you do, I mean, I won't be mad at it. But someone that is just going to be able to make me smile, that can even make fun of themselves, even have just a sense of humor is what I'm looking for. And that generosity does not have to be financial, but is willing to share their time with me. That, if I'm having a hard day, I can express that to you and you just are there for a FaceTime or a phone call, or, a date that maybe wasn't planned, but you're available. Could we just get
Hmm.
some quick dinner, something like that? So
Yeah.
those are some of the core values I'm looking for. And of course, I'm going to show up the same way, right? I want to show up the same for the person that I'm going to be dating. So those are some of my core values.
I love it. And I think that's a really good thing that you shared them, but you also shared what it means. So when you do
Yeah.
your homework,
Yeah.
make sure you're putting the word or whatever that is, but then also some action behind
Yes.
what it is you're looking for. Because now you have a list, but the list is actually way more than just superficial things.
Absolutely. And I mean, part of the why is, maybe we haven't touched on this, is when you start to get confused or a lot of those emotions get involved. Maybe your anxious attachment or avoidant attachment is
Mhm.
flaring up. You feel like you need to rush towards them, pull them towards you, or run away, or you seeking to control the situation out of this fear, somehow, or some type of scarcity mindset. Come back to your values. How do you feel? How are you showing up? How are they showing up? And is there starting to be some alignment there? You can really allow your values to help you date more objectively, which
Mhm.
is so important when you really get in it and you start catching feelings.
Yes, the rose-colored
It
glasses.
might get a little confusing. Yes, with those rose-colored glasses on. All right, let's ask this question now. For the flirty that feels like, I mean, we're just talking about it for a moment, but maybe losing themselves a little bit in the dating process, or they're starting to abandon their values a little bit. I imagine you see this in the workplace as well. so,
Yeah.
so some ways we can recalibrate, maybe come back to center, come back to ourselves.
Yeah, I think first I just want to acknowledge that it's so normal and
Mm,
doesn't mean it's great, but it
yeah.
does happen. And I think a lot of times it's unintentional or we haven't noticed, especially in the workplace. You look up, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, and you're like, who am I? And
Yeah.
what have I turned into? I see that a lot. I used to be a domestic abuse victim advocate.
Mm,
So
mm,
see that a lot there as well.
mm,
And there's a lot of shame and guilt, I think, associated with some of that change or abandoning your values for
yeah.
someone
Yeah.
in particular. So I just like to throw that out there, the therapist in
Absolutely.
me, that I think it does happen. I don't think it's ever really intentional. But
Mm,
you can also always come back to center and start chipping away and making small decisions that
yeah.
help. So whether it involves leaving a situation, having a harder conversation with your partner about how you're
Mm,
feeling or experiencing, like there's always things that you can do to kind of come back to that. But
hmm
as you mentioned, I think in having that more objectivity, it's always going to be helpful when you know. And whether or not it is on a piece of paper or not, I like to have them,
hmm
listed. It like something I reflect on pretty much weekly
Yeah.
of just how I'm showing up. And of course, there's going to be times where we're all acting out of alignment at
Sure.
some point
Sure.
throughout the week. I also think value patience and I can snap at my daughter. Like that happens sometimes, or my partner.
uh-huh.
Um, so there's that part of it.
Yes.
Something that I ask, which I think could be useful here, people when they first start a new job, especially when we've worked together and they are experiencing burnout and now they find a new role,
Mm,
is what's the outcome of this role for you right now?
mm,
And asking them to write that down somewhere so that
okay.
they know, like, I'm taking this job because I want XYZ. I want to feel more collaborative. I want to be appreciated more
Yeah.
in the workplace. I want to do something that I'm passionate about, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And list those very explicitly because, again, then when you come back to, you get a few dates down the road
hmm
and you are now like, I don't know if this is working or not, or I
hmm
feel a little bit off. You can
mm,
come back to why you initially wanted to reach out to this person,
yeah.
what it was that interested that like you, about them, the time in your life maybe as well. You might want to list like,
Mm,
am I ready for a relationship right now?
mhm,
And so if factors have changed throughout the process, whether it's how the person's showing up or maybe you've had like a significant life event that has
mhm.
maybe impacted you outside of the dating relationship, you can go back to that and say like, are these things still present here and am I still on the right path
Okay.
this way, or has something changed? And I think again, especially as you mentioned, when you're very much in your head about
Yeah.
should I, shouldn't I, or what am I doing the right thing? You can
Yeah.
always go back to what your original intentions were
Yeah.
and make sense of, has something shifted so far that it is time to end this, or
Yeah.
is something shifted so far in a positive direction that maybe I could move a little bit quicker,
Mm,
or a life event has reduced my capacity to engage with this person fully and maybe I need to take a step back just for
mhm,
myself, that kind of
mhm.
thing.
Mm. So helpful. Luckily, the flirties already have their core values list, so they can add this to the list as well, to their
Mhm.
reflection. They're starting a
Yeah,
whole a whole journal for this
I
episode. I
know.
love it because this is so good. I mean, a couple things I feel like I heard were this about self-compassion as well, because I've been in that relationship. Oh my gosh, I've been in that job where all of a sudden you look up, it's 2 years, 5 years, and you're like, where am I? How did I get here? Yeah,
Yeah.
having some self-compassion with yourself as you're having that conversation, you're doing some of these reflections, and just noticing, being curious, right? If it's early in the dating process, is there a conversation you need to have? I think sometimes we're quick to just, right, cut the cord and just walk away, just leave, just ghost. Ultimately, if you're feeling safe in that situation, if there's a conversation you can have the conversation. Maybe it means things don't work out, you go your separate ways, or maybe you come to alignment around a value where like someone was having a bad day or a bad week, or something was going on in their life that you didn't know about because they didn't tell you, or maybe that person is you. I think ultimately I just would like to see just more understanding
Hmm.
in the dating process. Sometimes I wonder how many relationships might exist today if people didn't just walk away so
Yeah,
quickly sometimes.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
This is a question for you.
Yeah.
I know like we've talked about your work journey a bit
Mm,
and your career
mm,
path. This could be for either
yeah.
relationships or that. But what are some things that you have done if you do notice that you're showing up almost like inauthentically? Like I know you've made some like radical
Mm,
shifts at some points, and
yeah.
do you recommend doing something like extreme and kind of upending it to get back to center, or what would you
Mm,
say to people who find themselves in like looking up and being,
yeah.
what is happening?
That's a good question. I think a good transition is the how we're going to end the interview is for the person that's experiencing workplace burnout, right? They're misaligned
Mhm.
at the workplace. What comes next? And I would say, don't do what I did
Oh,
necessarily.
really?
I mean, I definitely did some training. I did a lot of training as a coach before I quit my
Mhm.
full-time job, my 9 to 5 as a city planner for over 10 years. So I went to school for, have a whole ass master's degree and everything. And behind the scenes, I was training as a coach before I quit my job to start my business. But when it came to starting my business, my plan was there's always tomorrow, right? Let's try this, a hope and a prayer. And ultimately, it got me in a place of deep debt and burnout. And I had to re enter the workplace in a way that I wasn't prepared to do. It's why I work at a grocery store. Right. So at least it's taking some pressure off of how I can support my living expenses while I still build this dream that is
Mhm.
the Flirt Coach mission.
Yes.
And something I've done, it's this core values work, because every day I kind of am with this feeling, this thought of like, what am I doing? Like, what is the point? Like, what?
Mhm.
This is really actually so difficult, Kelsey. It's
I know.
so it's so hard. I mean, the social media piece is one thing, building a business is another thing. The podcast, it's, I mean, working 7 days a week nonstop, and it's been that way for years with really no
Yeah.
end in sight. And I'm okay with
Yeah.
that because I love it. But it really comes back to what's important to me is being able to be creative, have a creative outlet, and express myself in that way. I consider myself an artist.
Mhm.
Being able to help others in their journeys of just I mean, a big part of my motivation is mental health, my experiences with depression and anxiety. So helping people feel less alone, they can get out there, make those connections for the flirts, for the dates, and then somehow making an impact on the world, right? I am not one of those creators or people that is really about that soft life. That
Yeah.
is like, our purpose here on earth is just to live. I
Yeah.
think our purpose here on earth is to make a difference, is to
Yeah.
leave it
I agree.
in a better place than how we came into it. And that better, quote unquote, doesn't have to be on a grand scale. It could be as simple as volunteering in your community, right? As doing something for your neighbors, maybe caring for the environment, cleaning up a local park. Like, it doesn't have to be this huge grand gesture. So if that's my mission, is to be creative, help others, and make an impact, well, I could actually leave this all behind and still do that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. So being
And
open to, you don't know what the label or the path is,
right.
but the tiny steps every day.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So this has been an amazing conversation, flown by. we
I
got,
know. I was like,
oh my God, I'm just looking at the clock at these final few seconds, literally, for the person listening that is like, you've been talking about dating nonstop. I'm looking for a career change. I'm feeling burnt out. I'm unfulfilled. An initial few steps before working with you, because they're going to be doing that they could explore right now.
So going back to all of this values talk, I think what the most important thing that I have to say about burnout is you can experience burnout due to value misalignment, even if your workload is fine, even if you like your job, even if the commute is okay, even if the salary is where you need it to be. And a lot of people don't realize that. And once they do, it is one of the most affirming and eye-opening things that they can go through when they're experiencing burnout. So when you think about burnout, you got the exhaustion. Of course, we're all tired, but beyond exhaustion, the lack of motivation. So it's like the waking up every day, elephant on your chest type of feeling, like, I have to go to work today.
I know that feeling.
Even the smallest thing, sending an email feels like the worst thing
you're
ever.
moving a mountain, pushing a 1,000-pound boulder up a hill. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And then you get the cynicism and resentment. I think this also maybe shows up a little bit, if we're going to call burnout through dating, like dating burnout.
100%. That's what we didn't really get to today, but so many parallels. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's caused by workplace stress. And so when we think about either one of these circumstances, dating or work, if there is a stressor in the workplace, it's going to eat away at you over time. And that's why we get the cynicism, the resentment, the exhaustion. And then at the end, we experience reduced professional efficacy. So our confidence and our ability to get things done how we're used to starts to diminish. And I think that that's really important to know in the burnout process, because if you are looking at a new role, first, we again want to get clear on the values, what's misaligned, what's aligned, and you want to make adjustments in the next role. You don't want to just go to the next role for the sake of change, similar to a relationship.
Yes.
And just, I have a type vibe. If you're experiencing the same stressors over and over again, like, let's identify them directly and at the root cause. So that's what I help people do there. But again, identifying those values, figuring out what's misaligned, what's not working, and then pursuing something not for the role or the title, but for value alignment is going to be your best bet when you're experiencing burnout because of this. Because as I mentioned, even if your workload is fine, and you do value, let's say you value creativity and you are in a gray box every single day and your manager will never listen to any of your ideas and you can't ever implement anything that you think of, that's going to just constantly be something you can't quite put your finger on something maybe in like a dinner conversation with friends or a partner, you can't really articulate, but it's there and it's behind the scenes as a stressor. And so when we think about burnout, just know, I hear it all the time, well, I don't work that much, or I should be lucky that I have this salary. That doesn't mean you can't experience burnout. And so that's my soapbox on that process specifically. But if we're going back to values, identifying what those workplace values are, what's aligned, what's misaligned. And then if you're looking to something new, sometimes it can be fixed in your current environment. If it's something in your control, let's say you're really lacking collaboration and it's something that you can almost take ownership over, I'm going to throw some coffee chats on the calendar with people that I don't really connect with that often. And they're up for it. and that fills that bucket a little bit,
Okay.
that could potentially be a solution. But there's a lot of things in the workplace that we don't have control over,
Right.
that it is maybe something that you just have to leave and then go do something else that more aligns, kind of like how you did.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Kelsea Warren, thank you so much for coming back on Flirtations today. I'm going to
Thank
send
you
all the
for having
flirties,
me.
yes, your way to your socials to work with you. Where can they find you, follow you, and learn more?
Yeah, I'm just at the Seamless Coach on all the things. Instagram,
Fantastic.
TikTok primarily, but sometimes LinkedIn. Increasingly.
Yeah. Me too. You can also find the Flirt Coach over there. But follow Kelsea on all the platforms. Also your website, amazing. I'll have those links below in the show notes below for this episode.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being on Flirtations.
Thanks for having me.